Hello and welcome to Film Lovers. I'm Sonia Chung. I'll be talking to people who work in the film industry and who are also avid film lovers. Today I'll be talking to filmmaker Jason Impey. Is that right?
That's
Impey?
right. Yeah.
Hi Jason, how are you?
Hi, not too bad, thanks. I'm
Good,
glad to be here.
good. Where are you based at the moment?
I'm in Milton Keynes.
Okay,
I've kind of basically been in Milton Keynes all my life. Born in
okay.
Northampton, just down the road, and spent my whole life in MK.
We lived in Milton Keynes for a little bit when I was a kid. I think only about like
Oh
six
yeah.
months. Yeah. And it was quite a new thing at the moment. I remember the shopping centre being huge and
Yes,
a
yeah.
nice skating
Still
rink.
growing.
Yeah, and lots of roundabouts.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone says that. Yeah, can't be around.
Lots of roundabouts. All right then, Jason. So why don't you start off by basically giving us a timeline of your career? So, where your interest started from, how you got into it, and basically how you got to where you are today. So, give it away.
Right.
Take it away.
Yeah. It's quite a long story with me.
All right, go for it. We've got lots of time.
I was born in 1984, and literally from a very young age, late 80s, early 80s. I was only 5 years old. I got into watching films, really started to enjoy it, and my granddad used to collect videos. So every week he'd buy a VHS. So every weekend I'd be watching a new film and video, and so my film viewing grew quite fast at a quite a young age, and my mum was into horror books, which so I got into a little bit of horror stories, and then my granddad into films, and my dad had a camcorder that he was always filming family videos on. That combination kind of made me filming my own little horror
Yeah, yeah,
stories.
yeah, yeah. That's
So, uh,
cool idea.
um, so that was so yeah, from when I was five, I used to, as well as watching films, I started to think about, I was trying to find the next film I wanted to see and why they shot things the way they did. I had a soft spot for horror, like I said, so I was seeking out more horror and horror films, and that led to me when I was 10. I actually picked up my dad's camcorder at 10 and made my own short film. That was the first thing
Oh
I ever
wow.
did.
Do you
And
still have it around?
I do. It's just available. I kept it. I've remastered it from
I
VHS, and
want to
it's on
see
YouTube.
it.
It's actually, yeah, it's on Vimeo and YouTube, so that is available to see.
Oh, okay. I'll
Um,
have to watch it. That'd be funny.
and so that was my first thing, which then that just created more inspiration for me to take it further. So when I finished school at 16, they didn't do a lot of media or film in school back when I was there. It was very, it was just not really unheard of. So at 16, I went to college to do media, which was film studies and making films, and it was all film related and media related, which was right up my street.
Oh,
So
do
that
you
was
do
my
the
pure
BTEC
interest.
media
I
studies?
did, yeah.
Like me, yeah, I did the
I
same.
did a I did a GMVQ, then it
Okay.
went to BTEC, and then there was an AS on the side. And so yeah, for 1 year, because I wasn't great at school, but it turns out I didn't know this, but later in life I've been diagnosed as autistic. I didn't know that back when I was at school, which is why I
Yeah.
had like struggles. But in the good way, when I went to college at 16, I did a whole year's GMVQ in media, which I excelled at so much that they started giving me harder work. They said I was too I was too good for that
Oh,
class,
really?
because I couldn't get into BTEC on my GCSEs, but I did then go and do my BTEC
Yeah,
nationally
yeah.
popular and stayed at Bedford. I did it in Bedford because Milton Keynes wasn't offering the GMBQ, so I used to travel to Bedford every day. And then I also did an AS on the side as extra curriculum, and and that's where I did all my student films and experimented and kind of found my style, and it just opened my world more to film and the world of film and world cinema. So it was good for that, and that led to me. So that took me to 19, and as soon as I was 19, I started freelancing because my tutor's wife was in the creative arts, and they were looking for a cameraman to film a play, and so I kind of went straight into freelancing and specialized mainly in cinematography and editing, but also do my own stuff. So from 19, I went to London and worked in a lot of the TV studios, including Studio Disney and stuff. And it was interesting, but I had at that time in my life, I loved exploitation films
Hmm.
and trash films. So I had a real soft spot for video nasties and things like that. So I made my own. I made my own like little horror films,
Oh, did you?
and I won best film for a short in 2004, which was just after college, and that let me go to Raindance for free to do the producer's low no budget training, so I went there, which was
Oh
really
wow.
interesting. It really opened my eyes more, and
Yeah.
I I have helped a lot, but on people's projects, and I say freelance, and but because I've got my own distinct style, I ended up making my own films, in which I self-funded, also raised money for, and I've made my IMDb is a bit mental, so I've kind of lost track myself because there's been re-edits and retitles and releases, but I've made a lot of feature films that have been released all around the world on TV, DVD, Blu-ray,
Oh
VOD,
wow.
cinema release.
Very
I've had a
impressive.
mixed bag of stuff, and some good, some okay, some bad. Won awards, kind of been booed off as well. Banned, kicked off YouTube for 6 months. I've got many stories
Really?
about. Yeah, I've had all sorts of stuff in the past with my films, but I've stuck at it. I've been doing it professionally for over 20 years now, and
Okay.
it's had its hard times. But a few years ago, I did a documentary all about Vipco, the label Vipco, and that got released on 101 Black Label with Spookies, because I managed to get Spookies released by doing that. And that also got released by Vinegar Syndrome in America, and it's on Amazon and Vimeo. I got and that was quite good because it was a new, fresh piece of work for me, and I think I'm hoping people saw me in a different perspective because
Yeah.
I was known for a lot of horror films, and that of it I tried to show that there was more to me than just the old trashy horror films as well as I've got older.
Do
It's,
you have like somewhere in the archive or in the back of your house lots of embarrassing student films from your BTEC media days?
I
Because
do,
I
yeah, yeah.
because I
I've got a
love,
lot.
have
Yeah,
you?
full. I've got
Oh,
videos in the loft and tapes, and I have tried to put them all so they're on drives and discs and safe, so they're not rotting away. But yeah, I pretty much kept everything. I do have a
yeah.
massive
You're
binder
so
with.
lucky because we went like towards the end of our second year, we got to yeah try and make a show reel, so transfer
Yeah,
everything over. And I remember once, and I had it for a good 2 or 3 years, and then it just broke in the VCR, and the inside went like that.
yeah,
So I'm kind of gutted because I want to sometimes go back and see it. There's one or two up on Facebook, and like that somebody's posted, one of the students in my class. But the quality isn't that good because he's literally just filmed the computer screen.
right,
Um,
okay, yeah,
so yeah, but then it's quite funny to see me doing a cameo walking across. And also on that one, I was I think it was a drama or something. It was a short drama, and I was put in charge of sound, right? So I was
right,
carrying that big boom, and I was 16, 17, and that thing was heavy. And there's so many shots of the boob in the way.
yeah,
In a way, when the actors are like, it's in the bloopers, there's like a shot of it like coming up from underneath.
yeah.
But it's like total, you can tell it's a student film written all over.
Yeah. Yeah, so I didn't realise how bad some of mine were until many years later. I revisited them after doing a lot of stuff, and I was like, "Oh yeah, they're quite ropey." At the time, I thought they were passable, but actually, yeah, don't know what I was thinking.
um, so what are you working on anything at the moment?
Yeah, I've been shooting a few films for some people. I've been hired to DOP. One of them's a British gangster film, so stereotypical
Okay.
stuff there. The other one is also a bit of a British gangster, but more of a comedy element to it. Um, and I myself I've just finished a film, but which was back to my roots. It was an exploitation horror film, quite a nasty, and I've just wrapped that up within the last few weeks, and I've just this week sent the distribution pack off, so it'll be coming out later this year. But it takes so long, so it'll be the end of this year. But it's all wrapped for me. They're just now working on discs and taking
Yeah.
it. They're
It's
taking
a
it to
very
the
long
the
process,
Cannes
isn't it?
market. Yeah,
People don't
there's so
realise.
much involved in getting it released. You think the film's
Yeah.
made, and you breathe, but then yeah, a whole nother load of stuff starts. But
Do they so after the finished product, when they see it, do they have to give it a certain will they sometimes come back and say it's a bit too much to put in this censorship, for instance? They can't put it in a 15, or it could go in there, but it might just need to be chopped down a bit. Does that happen to you sometimes? Because you hear about
it
things.
has. I've had a few. I've had some bizarre stuff. So I've had stuff from title changes. where sometimes it's been a title change because they think they can't sell it. Other times that they thought the title was so disgusting, Amazon wouldn't stock it. So I've
Oh,
had to,
really?
change titles to films. They've regarding censorship, I have. I made a film that I'm quite known for. I did a film called Tortured, and that became a bit of a cult film. It was shot back in 2007, and it didn't actually come out till 2009, 10. It actually was released, but when it come out, when I was first trying to get it released, I didn't think of. I knew it was bad. It was a controversial film. It
Yeah,
it
yeah.
had elements of I Spit on Your Grave. In fact, some reviewers said it was I Spit on Your Grave meets Dawn of the Dead. So, and it was kind of what I was going for at the time.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and I knew America should be all right with it, but the UK wouldn't. But what stumped me is there was a distributor looking at it who were like associated with Warner Bros. And I got a phone call, and they said that the dialogue was disgusting, and they started. I had to cut the film and cut some of the dialogue out. They picked on me for that, which I didn't even think about. I thought it would be visual, like so. That stumped me. And then that said film came out again last year. It got re-released. So it had a 2021 Blu-ray which I remastered, and it come out from Dark Side releasing, and it come out in Canada and America, and it had a slipcase and really cool release, which was great. And then there was another version which I didn't know about until they released it, and they said, that's the cut version. I didn't know they'd cut it, and because they said, oh, the uncut one is on our store and special, but to have it stocked in like Walmart and Amazon, they had to release a cut now. So I've got to watch it myself, because I looked at the running time. It's 4 minutes missing from the film, and I don't know what they've hacked out. I've got an idea, but they just did it without telling me. I found out on release day it was cut. But I don't know how well that's selling, because I'm pretty sure most people have gone for the uncut version.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. Well, that's
it's
usually the most. That's usually the one that people are always after, aren't they? Like if you hear of a
yeah.
director's cut, that's the one everyone really wants to see, not the
Well,
cut
I did
version.
an audio commentary for it, and it was obviously for the uncut version. So that you have to get the uncut version to get my
To know
commentary.
what's going
That's not
on.
on the cut version. So yeah, that's So over 10 years later, and that film's still getting censored, which does surprise me a little bit.
But then at
I
least
didn't
it's
think
still
that
getting
bad.
lots of praise. I mean, do you know what I mean? Controversy, anything's good as long as it's good or bad, if you know what I mean. The feedback. So people are still watching it and talking about it, even if it's good or if it's bad in their eyes.
Yeah,
If that
I,
makes
I
sense.
learned a lot from doing that film. Like when I was first editing it, it was quite early days with YouTube and things being around. There was no Facebook and that back then, so I made a 4-minute preview to put on YouTube to get people excited that this was coming. So I put a lot of my own money into it, and I didn't really think about it. I just assumed you could put a naughty film on YouTube and it would just be censored. That you'd have to log in or be an 18 restricted.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it wasn't bad, but there was like a quick shot of a shower scene and a quick shot in the bedroom. I didn't think much of it. I put it up within 15 minutes. I've got red notices, and I got banned for 6 months off of YouTube for strikes. And this was for a 4-minute preview, which I was pretty annoyed about at the time. But look, it's funny looking back on it.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
yeah. But at
that
the time,
film,
you must have been thinking, "What the hell is going? What the hell is going on?"
and then we had a screening finally at the Prince Charles cinema in London. We did a premiere of it, and I invited Empire and Total Film down, and they did come down. And again, I think I was naive. I didn't really think it was like going to shock people as much as it did. And we had the actor brought 2 girls along with him that were his friends. That he was telling them all about the film, but I don't think he'd warned them. Well, he hadn't seen it himself, although he'd been in it. He'd not seen the finished
Yeah,
edit,
yeah, yeah.
and they got up halfway through the film and left him, so he was sat in the cinema on his own. And so we had walkouts, and yeah, that film's forever been. I'm remembered for that because it caused such a stir for all these
Oh,
years.
really? Did you get any reviews
But
then?
yeah, I've had mixed reviews. So some people over years it's become better received. It was
Yeah, yeah.
I have made some mistakes with it, and what I did do is a few years later I did recut it. I actually shot some additional scenes, and I re-edited it and it was released as Psychopaths. And that was only because I took on for a few years. I realised that I was doing something which I stood by it. Was but I crossed genres. It was a bit of a mixed genre film, and I think that was the bit of the problem when I released it. People didn't know how to take it, so I actually took a bit of the film out, reshot some scenes, and I made it a little bit more of a gritty thriller, like an old 70s sexploitation film, rather than
Okay.
and so it was more of a one genre film than mixing, and then that got released, and I do think that's the better version, and it did seem to get a better response, and people loved it because some of the new scenes were outrageous, and it got
Mm.
even more silly. But and again, I made a very silly mistake in my life. I made it very grindhouse and trashy, so I graded it really like it was an old lost film,
Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
worked at the time, but I wished I hadn't. So I am actually at the moment. I'm editing the final. It's like my Apocalypse Now or my Blade Runner. I'm doing the final cut of that film, and after this year, I won't ever touch it again. But I have started from scratch with all the rushes from the pickup shoots, the original, and I've put it all together again, and I'm doing what I should have done in the first place, and and hopefully I don't really want to cut it, but hopefully I'll do a sensible version. And it'll get a better release rather than me keep getting told off.
Yeah, yeah. But then also your perception of the way you see it is going to be different as throughout the years. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't always see things the same way as I did when I was younger. Like if you look at a painting, for instance, does that make sense? Or when you watch a film, like, I couldn't stand that when it was, when it was released, and actually you kind of warm up to it. But I think that's a lot to do with the fact that you yourself have grown up, and your mind is basically a bit more open
That's
to
exactly what I was about.
mixing.
I think I'm mature and I've got better eyes going into it. So the stuff I shot all over the place is better for me to start a clean canvas of all this footage, because I think I can make it a better film with a more sensible grade rather than making it trashing, more sensible decisions where how the story was told. But it did well. I was pleased with it back in the day, and it did do what I set out to do, which was to make a modern video nasty, and it did homage a lot of films at the time, which I still do. I've always had a soft spot, but I really did love like the video nasty era, and that was a big soft spot of mine. And this film did kind of tick a lot of those boxes, which it was before there was a whole influx of them. Obviously, the
Yeah,
last few
yeah,
years, so many indie films and stuff out there. It's and the market is in flux. It's really hard to
really.
stand out now. Since I did that, I've seen some crazy films since then, and I even think, how's my, at the time I thought I was pushing boundaries, but since then, film, that it's
With
been
your-
to me more lenient. There's stuff
Yeah, yeah,
out there
yeah.
playing these days, but
But then
yes,
you get some horror films actually where you think, like for instance, they're quite fearless, the filmmakers, don't they? They don't have any boundaries. That
yeah, yeah,
so, and you do get films like, I mean, I haven't seen them because I'm too much of a whip, but I've heard of them and I've seen things on YouTube and the reviews and stuff, like things like The Hills Have Eyes and things like the Wes Craven stuff did. It
yeah.
it you think there's only so far they can, but they go beyond. He goes beyond that point, and actually you think, oh, I don't know what's going to come up now because he's not safe at all. Do you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
whereas you might get some that sort of play it quite safe, but they do this sort of the normal way of building up the tension and slowly. But you kind of think, yeah, actually they're going to kind of spare your um not spare your feelings, but you know what I mean. You think they're going to have a sort of like a cross boundary, like we can't go beyond that point.
Yeah, I mean, I like I do like the original Hills Have Eyes. I'd heard a lot about that film growing up, and it was actually quite hard to come across at first when I was young. But I managed to get I used a service called Film Vault, and they would find old videos and clean them up like brand new. And I managed to get the Hills Have Eyes back when I was at college, the original one. At the time, it was just the original that was out, and I love A Nightmare on Elm Street, so I do like Wes Craven, but select works I find
Mm.
him a bit chalk and cheese. I talk about my partner's a cinephile, and we always talk about a lot of film, and I always come to I do like Wes Craven. I love Freddy Krueger and what he created, but I think some of his other works a bit patchy. Like The Last House on the Left is a very strange film. It's
Mm.
a really dark subject, and then got loads of comedy elements like
Yeah.
throughout that are really out of place. They feel really out of place. And Hills Have Eyes was to me a bit more of a traditional horror, but again, there was something about it the point I was getting at is the remake I thought was brutal. I went to the cinema and saw the remake of Hills Have Eyes, and I thought the soundtrack, you said they pushed it even further. I thought it was actually a lot more grim and boundary pushing than the original, and I thought the remake was really like tense
Oh,
and
really?
like, you know, it left a massive. I saw it twice at the cinema because I loved it so much. I was so, and I don't, and it's probably a controversial thing to say that but I do think the remake is better than the original of the Hills Have
Yeah,
Eyes. You know, I thought they
yeah,
improved it a lot. So it was and yeah, and they, to me, the original was a once kind of banned film in the UK, but the remake kind of, you know, stamps over that. It's a
yeah,
lot worse in a lot in every way possible. Like you said, that every bad bit of the original they pushed even further in the remake.
yeah.
But times have changed a lot.
Well, I think people are a lot more tolerant now. I don't know. Does that make sense? Whereas, I guess, I mean, we are very PC now, so that's a bit of a disadvantage. But then also, there's not so much taboo in society and general things. I think everyone's, like I said, is generally more open-minded to new experiences and things like that. Does that make sense? Whereas in a
Yeah.
certain decade, maybe in the 80s, things were expected this way and thing. And I was talking to someone and saying, like, for instance, the censorship then, if you watch a film from that period and it was given something like, I mean, for instance, Jaws, I was talking to my friend about this. I think that was PG-13 or something. PG, it might have been PG or PG-13, but that would not be a PG-13 now, would it? I mean, it's still
No,
quite scary,
I
I think.
remember when I was a kid, Jaws used to be a 15 on video in the shops, and
Oh,
now
okay.
on Blu-ray, it is a PG now. It's
Oh,
on Net,
really?
it's like a family film. But when I was a kid, that was a straight out 15 rated movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I mean, America have always been a bit more lenient. So they do PG-13, and we get a 15. They've always been, but in the
yeah.
UK, there's a few films that have changed. Uh, I've noticed a few. Predator shocked me. Predator used to be a hardcore 18 rated film, and now that's a 15. And when
Oh,
I grew up, I
really?
used to sneakily watch it. But that film's brutal. And so and again, Terminator, the original Terminator was an 18, and that's dropped to a 15 as well. They've dropped a lot of old films
You know
now.
what's funny is that, like, my friend Tom and me, we've spoken about it, and we said, like, the second Terminator is more of an action film, isn't it? Whereas the first one is more of it, like a slasher film. Really, he's
It's
relentless.
got horror elements to it. It is a B
Yeah.
movie horror film. Yeah.
So you can understand why that would be an 18, and it's like you said, it's not brutal, like to the point of the other stuff that's out there. But at the time, I think it was like 1979 it was released. That must have been quite shocking to watch, I'd imagine, especially in the
The-
cinema.
when he shoots up the police station, it's quite
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
I remember it got pulled off the TV once because of the news. There'd been a shooting, and the Terminator was supposed to be on later that week, and they pulled it off for showing because of
Oh, really?
a bad taste because of him
Yeah,
going around shooting.
yeah, yeah. So what were your influences and your film influence? So obviously you said you were really into the horror and slasher films. Did you have any favorite filmmakers that you were like influenced by or you looked up to during that time?
I mean, I do. I love David Cronenberg. I've always loved David
Oh, I
Cronenberg's
find
work.
it was so disturbing. Do you know what? Like, I I've seen bits of it and of like his like stuff and in those like those countdowns of the scariest and
Yeah.
what's the one where one guy's trying to he's got a pair of scissors.
Oh, the Dead Zone.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I just it just makes even the thought of it like when
The bathtub where he, yeah, like, yeah, that's
he's
the.
I can't remember what he does, but he's very good at disturbing people, giving them
I must
nightmares.
admit, I was young when I saw that, and even I was quite. That was a creative way of suicide. I
Yeah.
mean, I know it was based on a Stephen King book, and I know Stephen King's quite dark, so basing work on a Stephen King book and him making it. But yeah, that was inventive. I'll give him that.
What does he
I've
do
never
with
seen that.
scissors? Without trying to make us feel sick?
He lies in the bathtub and places the scissors at a height so that he opens his mouth and puts his hands behind his head and like crashes down onto the scissors to kill himself, which is just a crazy thing to whoever thought of that
Yeah,
method of
yeah, yeah, yeah.
doing an
Yeah.
escape. Well, yeah, I must admit that stayed with me. That whole film. That's the one thing I do remember about that film. Is
So David Cronenberg was a big influence on you, obviously.
yeah, because he did a lot of the body horror stuff, and I loved the Fly, the remake he did in '86 of The Fly. I thought with Jeff Goldblum, I thought that was a really clever film.
Yeah.
Um, the effects, the story. I mean, that's another example where it's an original classic horror, but the remake was just amazing. It was a whole different vision to that story.
Yeah.
Uh, and I do think his films are good as well. They're not just kind of like gross out fun. They're normally very strong, meaningful pieces of work as well.
Yeah.
They're challenging. You can talk a lot about Cronenberg's films. There's a lot of thought put into all of his stuff, from the sets to the soundtracks to the way they're shot, and a lot of these stories are always like picking at society and either technology or what's wrong with the world. So I've always found that quite interesting as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. But that's what I mean, some good horror films out there, they're very clever at picking up on like you said, things in society or politics. Remember watching, that like Bravo 100 Scariest Moments, and they had a bit of the Candyman, and at the time they were saying that actually that was very rare to see a black, because he's a black actor, isn't he?
Yes,
The
yeah,
hero.
Tony Toddy.
And at the time, it would have been very, very rare to see that. Um, but it was making somewhat of a political statement, because it came out just no, literally, it's kind of like what you said about yours. Like, they finished it and then they put it in the back of the car and drove all the way to the other side of the country to see if anyone would buy it. And on the radio, they Martin Luther King had just been shot, so it kind of came out. It was more of a political statement. I think it was either that film or it was something else, but I can't remember exactly. But yeah, they are very clever at doing that and hiding the meaning behind things or images. Does that make sense? But actually, it's saying a lot more than you really realize.
Yeah,
Makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah.
So yeah. Do you have any favorite remakes of horror films?
Yeah, I said, I like The Blob, the 1988 version of The Blob. That was a brilliant remake. I thought that was yeah, a big improvement. The original's a classic, but that remake was just mental. To
Yeah,
sum it
yeah.
up, it was crazy. The characters in that are all really fun, larger than life, and it's got some incredibly inventive effects and kills in that film as well. And I find that pure entertainment. That film, it's horror but also fun, and it's
Yeah.
got a trash element without being too cheesy. So it's a good blend, that film.
But then, because I remember saying this to my friend Tom, there's that fine line between horror and comedy, isn't there? Like, it's very
Yeah,
subtle. Like, I mean, for instance, I remember seeing somewhere that in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for instance, there's like a scene where they're feeding the grandfather a finger or something like that.
yeah,
And you think that's really gross, but it's funny as well. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah,
that's kind of like the disturbing way that humans actually think. Do you know what I mean? But they would never say it. Does that make sense? It's kind of like
yeah, yeah.
subconscious type thing. So there is that kind of fine line, and then you get like black comedy, which is that a bit of horror, but then it crosses over more onto the sort of very
It is. I mean, I comedy and horror do go hand in hand.
mm,
I think comedy is the hardest genre to do work on, because I've spoke to a lot of filmmakers about this, and I have been involved in some of them, and I find it hard. And I know it is known as a hard thing, 'cause sometimes what you find funny, other people don't, and
mm,
getting the end of comedy is hard. I said horror and comedy can go hand in hand. I do like straight horror, but as I say, comedy in horror films can sometimes tip it to a real cheesy level, and it's a very Hollywood thing to do. And
yeah.
sometimes I think it can spoil a good horror film by being they can put some very out of place lines or things in there, and I am a bit like that. That's a bit silly. Or if it's a pure comedy horror, then it's like Scary Movie. I think it's funnier because it don't take itself serious, and you know you're going into just a
No,
silly
and
film.
it's a parody of horror
Yeah,
films, isn't it? And the genre.
but when a horror film is quite supposedly serious one minute and then doing something silly the next,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I laugh at films when they're ridiculous in a good way, like as in like Jason Voorhees, Never Dying, and all kinds like that can be quite fun and tongue in
yeah,
cheek. But when there's a really silly comical character in a serious film, sometimes they can be a bit annoying to me. And it's almost like they're trying to make things funny and appeal to an audience to get people in, but it's a bit you're sacrificing a bit of the film there for that
yeah,
laugh, that gag, just to get. And yeah, it's interesting in a cinema sometimes when you hear if people get the gags or not. 'Cause it's,
yeah. What's the name of that actor? He's lovely, Warwick Davis. Wait, did he play the Leprechaun? Is that very much a kind of
yeah,
comment? Yeah, it's a bit naff, isn't it? And that's like a very, I mean, there's a very young Jennifer Aniston in that film. She was like 21, and she doesn't want anything to do with it now that she's famous. She's like, she doesn't want anything to do it or be associated with it. She obviously did it just for the work and the money. Um, but that's very much a kind of comedy element, isn't it, to it?
I normally expect a few one-liners or
Yeah,
cheesy
yeah.
stuff. I suppose some of the films I've really enjoyed sometimes maybe have been that bad they're good, so they're kind of funny, but for the wrong reasons. But to me, that's
Yeah,
pure
yeah, yeah.
entertainment. But I've got a soft spot for the Italian cannibal and zombie movies from the late '70s and early '80s and all that sort of stuff as well. I grew up a lot on those, so um, I don't think they're funny, but a lot of people laugh at them because of the bad dubbing, the bad production
Oh,
values, the
really?
outrageous, and so they get a laugh out of it, but for different reasons, I think. So
Well,
they're
it's so
classed as
over the
horror, but
top, isn't it? I mean,
yeah,
I've seen bits of them, and they're really, really, like, really brutal and disturbing, but it's so over the top lavish, like the blood just keeps pouring out, just things
yeah,
like that. And is it Demons, the film where these people go to watch a zombie film, and then all these zombies start breaking out into the cinema and
yeah.
actually start attacking people in the cinema, and then like they think, oh, it's part of the show, it's part of the film or something, and the
That's
others go,
that's a
get
fun
out, get
film.
out.
I mean that's another film where I cry with laughter because I love the film and there's a guy in there he plays the pimp he's wearing the white suit and it's the black guy who actually is a stereotypical pimp but and he's in the second one as a different character but that he steals the show in that film he's so over the top. It's so funny, but so good at the same time. His performance, where he's telling everyone to back off because they're doing it wrong, and he's kicking the head out of the cinema seats to like break it and show off, and then gets attacked. But he's acting, steals it. I cry with laughter every time. But he makes to me he also makes it so much better.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, that was to me is a good blend of like it's to me it's a bit of a comical element, but it's it fits. He owns that character. I still buy however over the top it is. I still can fully believe in that character. It's, and he's as good in the sequel. He's the gym instructor in the sequel,
Oh, is
throwing
it?
the
So
weight
he plays
around
him
at
in the
them. So
sequel.
yeah, he plays basically the same character,
Oh,
just in a
okay.
different scenario.
Well, they obviously enjoyed watching him to bring him back for the second one and play a different character.
I think there's a lot of unintentional comedy in some of those films, but
Yeah,
that to me is also what makes them the charm. It is a bit of a charm, and I think some filmmakers have tried to recreate that. I've seen modern films homaging them, but there's just something about that era you just can't. It's like a
yeah.
golden time that's gone now. You can never kind of capture what they did back then.
And also over time, you realise that actually because they didn't have the technology or the the effects or whatever, that sometimes it does look really, really naff, and that's what can actually make it quite funny looking, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So, so yeah. I'm trying to think of a question to ask you. so, so you're working on something right now. Do you have a favorite documentary? Because you said that you worked on a documentary. Do you have any favorite
yeah.
documentary?
I've ended up doing a few documentaries over the years, which I find them hard to do. I think I like doing them, but they're a lot harder because you have to find people who can talk about the subject and
Yeah,
get at
and there's a lot
the
of
thing.
research you need to do, isn't there?
And it's just yeah, and it's a pain getting all the clearances for stuff, and it's to me there's a lot more challenges getting that put together, especially as a feature than a film itself. But
Mm,
I do enjoy documentary. I mean, I actually like a lot of serial killer documentary stuff. I find them interesting, but
mm.
I've watched a few good ones about the video nasty eras myself, or about the BBFC going nuts in the 80s and changing the face of censorship. There's quite a few good documentaries on them.
The
Um,
Exorcist was one of them, wasn't it? That was a big thing when it came out. It was like
yeah,
banned.
that got that was
In the
banned for a
BBC.
long time.
Was that banned? It was, wasn't it? It
It
was.
was that, yeah.
It caused
Yeah,
such a, and I think that was in the 70s or something. But then actually
yeah.
now if you watch it, I mean it is still scary, but like you see the effects and it kind of is quite kind of like you can tell it's from a different era, if that makes
It's
sense.
like the religious aspect. They didn't like the disturbing factor of the film, and
Yeah.
it's a dark, depressing film, but very well done.
Yeah, yeah,
It's one of my favourite horror films. Actually, Exorcist. I've watched that many times. I
How
have a
old
big
were you
soft
when you
spot.
first watched it?
I was mid-teens when I finally got to see that,
Oh,
because again,
okay. That's not
when I
that
was
bad.
growing up, it was quite hard to. It was banned when I was growing up,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it finally got re-released from video and cinema again, and along with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, they both come out similar time, re-released.
Yeah.
When they changed over, when the hands changed at the BBFC, they kind of come back out. Which, so yeah, I had to. It was much easier to get. So one Christmas, I got a video of that actually when it first came back out, which is now upgraded to DVD and now Blu-ray, and no doubt will be 4K soon. So keep buying the same film over and over again,
Yeah, yeah,
collecting.
yeah, yeah.
I'm a collector as well, and I love getting cool editions. But the amount of times I've got a certain film is ridiculous.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think the original Evil Dead is a film that I've got probably most times throughout the formats and the amount of releases I've ended up buying of that film. I've got it about 11 times. From the original video to the
Yeah,
DVD
yeah.
on the Blu-ray to now 4K, and all the box sets in between and elaborate editions they do.
Did you
It's
ever see the film Creepshow?
yes, yeah.
I I haven't seen it, but I saw a clip with this guy, this body on the floor, and then all these cockroaches start coming out of him, and then the
Yeah,
whole
that's
the thing on the TV, they were saying that actually because they had to get some poor person to actually collect all these cockroaches to fill up the entire room, and the crew were kind of sitting there like cringing, and, with all these
I mean,
cockroaches.
I actually am an exotic pet keeper, so I actually have a lot of Madagascan hissing roaches in my house. And
Oh no!
I'm not faced. I have a lot of bizarre animals that I keep as pets, and I've even used in films. And they have film enclosures, like they've got figures and themes of horror films in their enclosures. I've got half a zoo in my house and half a film museum in the other. So it's
Oh
like
really?
a nice blend of stuff. It crosses over.
Yeah, please don't show me those cockroaches. I'll be like, oh no, it's just a horrible feeling. Yeah, in China, when I was there, there's lots of them and really big ones as well, and they can
Yeah.
fly. I came across a couple that were flying, which was even worse. And so I hate cockroaches completely. And actually, the funny story was when I came back. Um, one or two of the little ones got into my suitcase. So they spent. I mean, I was on the plane for about 13 hours, and I got back, and my room was full of baby cockroaches, and I had to bring the exterminator in because of this breed so fast. These little horrible things running around. It was just awful. So yeah, that's kind of put me off. Even more cockroaches. I just don't like them at all. Ugh. So yeah. So do you happen to get together with any other filmmakers in your area? Do you have a lot?
I do. When I grew up in Milton Keynes, there wasn't hardly anyone doing it, and it was a small little town at the time. And so I was one of the first people doing stuff, and I made quite a lot of films here. And then over the years, a few people have moved in that are filmmakers, and there is a film network here. And I know a lot of them, and good or bad, I'm known sometimes. Like my films have not been overly well received. I there was a writer and an actor locally at the time I worked with who it was a social drama. It was originally called Jake. the guy that wrote it was Wade Radford, and he acted in it. We had to change the title for distribution, and it got changed to Sex, Lies and Depravity, which is a bit of a play on Sex, Lies and Videotape, I think,
Yeah.
from the but it 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 was different for me, which is why he brought me in to direct it, and I shot and edited it, and it was very different at the time. This was in 2012. It was about a guy who had trouble at home, so it dealt with domestic abuse and sexuality because he was coming out as gay, and then he had a drug abuse. So it was all this social commentary, and I was really excited because it was very different. I mean, I love all cinema, and I kind of matured into prestige cinema. I got into, and I thought this is great. This is actually a different direction, and it was a very gritty film, like a typical British film. And when he got it to get screened in Milton Keynes, they thought it showed Milton Keynes in a really bad light and didn't really want to be interested in it. But it did get released. It came out on DVD, and it's done better in America than it has done in the UK, which is ironic because it's an English drama, but and very English because of the slang
Yeah,
and just
yeah.
the way. Yeah, I thought it's like Train Spotting almost. It's a very British film, but yet the Americans seem to release it and lap it up a lot more than the home
That's
turf.
so funny, isn't it? That happens though sometimes though, doesn't it? Like you get
Yeah.
bands that like UK bands that have done, you know, not so well here and they've really, um exploded in the US. And like who was that band? I mean, we didn't hear much of them. Bush was one of them, wasn't they? They're
Oh, yeah.
English. So that's kind of like an example, even though it's music. But yeah. And also they're used to a different way of, I guess, seeing things or doing things. It's a bit like comedy as well. Like, for instance, I think the Americans wouldn't quite understand English comedians because does that make sense? Like, I don't know how to explain it. We get the American ones, and they can be like they're funny, but they're very kind of like shouty. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I've had years ago. I had a weird experience where I had an American distributor that had released some stuff, and I've made a new film. It was called The Turning at the time, and then I sent it to a distributor who was in America, and obviously I was hoping. At the time, for me, it was all about physical, but digital was starting to come in, and they were that was a bonus to me. I wanted the DVD release really. That was the more I felt like you've achieved something having something in your hand. And first of all, they got me to change the title, so it became Zombie Lover, which I wasn't a massive fan of, but that's what the film's known as now. But the idea of the turning it was someone slowly turning into a zombie, and I thought it was a bit more of an artistic play. But they dumbed it down to Zombie Lover, and then after a lot of talk and me doing everything almost getting ready for release, they decided that they wanted to only release it digitally because I was English and to them that's world cinema. They felt like there would be a culture barrier. They said it was hard to sell, but this is America. I'm like, well, we weren't talking a foreign language, so
I know,
like, no.
I know.
So I cancelled that and took the film back and found another American distributor that put it out on DVD and eventually come out. But yeah, that really shocked me about they were saying, well, this is world cinema to us. It's a strange film. We're not really sure about it. I was
But you
like,
do
it
hear
wasn't.
about things like that, don't you? I think there's sometimes you can get a lot of conflict between the filmmaker and the distributors because I mean obviously the distributor's job is to make sure they can sell the film. I mean, if you think about it, it's a product, isn't it? That's why you go to those festivals to network and try sell your film. So it's a bit like selling a new product in the shop, if you know what I mean. You need someone to do it for you. And in
Yeah,
order for that to work, sometimes they'll need to replace an actor. Like the a very good example is The Beach, wasn't it? Because Danny Boyle was wanting to use Ewan McGregor, but because it was an American company financing it, they said they wanted Leonardo DiCaprio, like a more, you know,
yeah,
high. So, which kind of in that sense makes sense because you're going to go for the more well-known brand, aren't you? You're going to go for the one that everyone recognizes, and if that makes sense. I don't know that. Well, I mean, even though Ewan McGregor was a well-known actor, he probably, in their eyes, wasn't as lucrative at the time. If that makes sense.
yeah. Nice. It's
Yeah.
distributors do look at things a bit differently sometimes. I do try to myself now, but like with my film I said earlier, Torture, they're trying to look at a hook of how they can sell the film. At the time making it, I had a completely different. I was just making a film. There's no right or wrong way for this, but sometimes I'm like, I like to make a film that I would like to watch, but then I am an audience member that enjoys film anyway. So if I like it, I'm like, there must be other people out there that want to see it. But
Yeah, yeah.
I'm into niche films by all accounts, so I have to. I do sometimes have to think bigger because I probably made that a little bit too niche with content. But if you edit it up, which I'm doing now, then I could probably find a wider audience with it anyway.
Maybe
So,
you should make a film about torturing the distribution people. The behind,
distribution.
so it could be like a bit of a parody of like a sort of a filmmaker like you know, maybe starting out at the beginning of his career and you know getting really fed up with these people who are doing.
It's a taboo area for indie film these days, distribution, because it's a big change in market at the moment, especially with VOD and digital. It's physical media seems very on the decline actually, and
Mm,
for the first time in the last few years, I can really feel the days are slightly getting numbered on how people receive films. I think it's definitely crossing over onto a lot of digital platforms, and
mm,
even cinema lately seems to be fighting a bit against the digital giants. I do
yeah.
a new generation coming, and I go to cinema a lot, and it's always quiet now. I must admit, physical media disappearing from shops, cinema like seats becoming empty. It all seems to be
Yeah.
very home cinema in your home, putting Amazon Prime on Netflix or
Yeah,
when
yeah,
they get.
yeah. But then, I was talking to someone about this, and he said, well, actually, things like Netflix and Amazon, etc., they're kind of like a hungry monster. You know, they have to come up with stuff all the time. So
Yeah,
there's going to be more work generated and put on there because there's a big audience there. But at the same time, I think it's really sad because, for instance, you're my generation. You're the same age as my sister, apparently, because
right.
yeah. So my middle sister. I was gonna say because so during our time when we used to go to the cinema, it was a big deal, wasn't it? Like the new film of la 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 is out, and you'd go and watch it, and it would be there for a good few months. Whereas now everything is churned out so
Yeah, it is
quickly.
quite sad a little bit. I'm a bit, oh, I miss the old
Yeah,
times a bit, really.
and I still kind of, I still kind of envy people that went to see like Jaws in a cinema and things like that because that, on a big screen, that would have been amazing. Um, but yeah, so it's kind of you know, a shame because it used to be such an exciting thing to look forward to. Like during the school holidays, we'd always go and watch a film, and that was always kind of like our day was kind of planned around that. Like we'd go do some shopping, get some popcorn and stuff, and then.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's just it's kind of. But I think it's just the way things have evolved throughout the years, and Netflix and all those online platforms, they've come in and like you said, they've kind of taken over really, haven't they?
yeah, and I think I think the pandemic didn't help because it kind of
No.
forced people to watch it at home, and so I think people again have adapted and got used to this instant on demand. Sit on your sofa and buy or stream now. It has become kind of a norm to people now, and
Yeah. Um, and actually it's a good point to bring up. I've
yeah, anything else?
noticed that some films I've noticed, they get released on an is it a digital platform? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, at the same time as the cinema.
Yes.
Almost putting the nail in the coffin themselves because they were worried about sales. They've almost sealed the deal themselves that cinemas become niche, and yeah, because so yeah, the same day I go to the cinema, you could sit at home and order it and
But
watch it for your TV.
that's what I find really, but then I guess from their perspective, less people, especially during the pandemic, during the lockdowns, are gonna go to cinema because it was closed, so they'll
Yeah,
make more money from people. But it doesn't really make sense, do you know what I mean? So, and didn't Scarlett Johansson, she sued Marvel, didn't she?
yeah,
Or
because
something like
Black
that.
Widow came out on Disney Plus while it was at the cinema, which was supposedly not supposed to be in the contract, but they
Oh,
they,
the
they
same
think
time?
yeah, and they think it
Okay.
affects ticket sales. But I was surprised myself because we've got Disney Plus, and yeah, it's just here at no additional cost because we've got the subscription rather than
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
the
yeah.
cinema. But it's it's a shame because I think that the cinema does offer a good experience. It's still really good to see
Yeah, like you
you know,
said.
I've got a home cinema system I've kind of set up myself, but it's still not as good as actually
Yeah.
physically going to cinema and seeing something like that on the biggest of screen and the good sound, surround sound.
Well, it's kind of fun, isn't it? Like, you go get your ticket and then the usher shows you
Yeah.
your ticket and stuff. Actually, I worked at I could tell you some stories about that. I worked at the Odeon. Oops, I should have said it. I worked at, doesn't matter, I left. It was years ago. Um, and I was there for a good few months. Like, nobody did any work. Like, it was all
Right.
students and everyone just used to mess around, and it was just, yeah. But actually, you could see, like, that, like, the new Twilight film. I mean, this is how long ago the new Twilight film came out, and all these teenage girls come running to see Robert Pattinson. Um, so yeah, it was funny. Like, and actually, it's quite interesting because you see how the audience changes with each film. Does that make sense? There's a different
Yeah,
demographic of
yeah.
people. So yeah, you get, like, I was going to say a silly film like Twilight series, where well, it's mostly all teenage, girls and stuff, and you get one or two boyfriends that been dragged along, and they kind of go up. Like, "Oh, I just came along because she dragged me," kind of thing. Um, but yeah, it is interesting to see, actually how the film industry works to that point, or like, I mean, it'd be interesting for me to talk to someone who, for instance, who used to work in a video shop or like Blockbusters, because obviously
Yeah.
things, Do you remember going to Blockbusters? Did you ever go to Blockbusters?
do. I used to use Blockbuster. It is it is nostalgia, but I mean, I've always been someone who liked to also buy, so I buy videos a lot and go to
Yeah,
the video stores, but used to use Blockbuster as well to buy stuff. And I was only saying the other day, but even that's become the only place I can actually go out and buy a Blu-ray if I want a film's probably HMV. That's the only shop left. Otherwise, it's online. I have to physically go to Zavvi or Amazon. So there's hardly any. Even the high street is now become alienated. There's only one shop in this whole place of Milton Keynes that will maybe sell me it 50-50 on their stock. Otherwise,
yeah,
it's forced me to go. It's forced me to log online yet again and get and use the internet to
yeah,
which, years ago, I would go up there and you'd have HMV and Virgin Megastores and Silver Screen, and even WH Smith and Woolworths had a big collection of films. There was loads of places to go. Um, I could spend hours browsing all these video stores, but now
yeah.
yeah, there's
But
nothing.
that's why they did so well. That's basically why Blockbusters came sort of went bust, didn't they? When all this digital stuff came out, and there's like
Yeah,
Jessop's as well. Do you remember Jessop's? The
yes,
that was
I used to use that for
well,
camera equipment. Actually.
yeah, because you did it your BTEC as well. So I'd have to go there to get my film. Um,
Yeah,
and black and white film is more expensive than color, isn't it? It was at the time, I
yeah,
think.
it did go that way in the end. Yeah,
Yeah, and I remember having to go in there, and I was like, "What?" It was such a boring play, but it's just the people that worked there. It wasn't the shop itself. It was just some very strange sort of, like, people were just like, "Oh," and there was one woman who used to always moan all the time, one of the saleswomen. But yeah, they all kind of basically went bust. It's a bit like Thomas Cook and everything like that, because now everyone can just go online and click, 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 and it's there. So
yeah.
it's it's also, yeah, it is funny.
It's
How
changed a lot since I've been making films as well. Because when I used to make a film, I used to have to physically make copies and send those screeners out for people to watch, and even distributors, and physically post it and all. But now, obviously, I can just do an online digital link that's locked, and it's all very instant and very quick. If it's a yes or no, or
yeah.
reject or change this, where yeah, and I used to be constantly down the post office posting backs off and hard drives and stuff. So yeah, the change it's good and bad. It's more convenient, but it's because technology's changed as well. There's a lot more people can make films because it's accessible. Um,
What
I mean,
This is
I
it, and I've
myself have shot a
spoken.
five of them.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
I shot a yeah, actually I myself shot a film on an iPhone, and it's just, it sounds mad, but I have a lot of good equipment. But I shot this film because of speed and what we were doing, experimenting. And I used Filmic Pro, which is the app they use for Tangerine and Threshold and some films that were shot on phones. And I wouldn't have believed it myself, but I got a gimbal. I put the phone all on the right settings, and it's really good. It looked really good, and the distributor didn't even ask what I shot it on. I sent the film off. They was all excited talking to me. They've not once questioned if I it's shot on a phone. They
Yeah,
wouldn't.
yeah.
I don't think
No,
they even know.
I know
Like,
someone who did exactly the same, and he said, actually, he said, "Would you know that this was shot on my iPhone?" I was like, "No," because the quality was
yeah,
amazing. So, so like you said, anyone can go out and get a phone and point it or whatever. It's so accessible now. In a way, it's become, I think, like you said, because you can just put it online and that's it. Um,
yeah, instant
it,
release from your phone. You
but
can
that's it.
shoot, edit it on an app, and then
Yeah,
upload it.
and it's
Done.
done. It feels kind of greedy. Does that make sense? It's kind of
Yeah.
like you're not fast enough. Hurry up, hurry up. Can I say,
There is that attitude of a new generation. I want to see it. I want to see it now. I want to see a quick bit done.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
the attitudes have made it very different. I think how you deliver and watch films for a new generation for sure.
Yeah.
They don't seem to have patience of waiting for a disc to come through the post where they can
No.
just click a button and order it, stream it straight to the house.
And do you remember, this is gonna make me sound old, but do you remember, in the 80s and before, everything would stay in, or sometimes in the 90s as well, would be in a cinema for quite a long time. I think
Yeah,
at some points they were 1 year. Do you know what I mean? And then later, or maybe 6 months.
it would
So
take a long time for them to come out from the cinema to home video.
yeah. So can you
Massive.
imagine this generation?
I was shocked about some of that stuff actually recently, because I've got a cinema card and go as much as I can, and I wanted to see The Last Duel that Ridley Scott done, and I was thinking, oh, that looks quite good. It was quite under publicised, and when I looked it up, it played for 1 week at the cinema, so I didn't get a chance to see it. And I'm like, and then obviously there's a lot of stuff that kicked off about it bombing and not doing well. But I'm like, I would have gone to see it, but it was literally there for a week.
Yeah.
So I couldn't,
You didn't have a chance.
I was really gutted, and now it's on Disney Plus for nothing a few months later, and I've only been able to put it on here. But I'm like, I wish I could have seen it at the cinema.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, oh, so do you have any of your own films, your old films, where you have a cameo appearance, like say Alfred Hitchcock did?
Yeah, actually, I, I'm I do much prefer being behind the camera and being a filmmaker, but back in the day, due to restraints of all sorts of reasons, I ended up having to actually take parts on, and I want to say begrudgingly, but I trusted myself. I could rely on myself. I ended up putting myself in some films, and playing some quite big parts in some of my early films, and that actually led to people wanting me to be in their films. And even recently, I've been pulled into being in people's films, even though I don't I don't pose as an actor. I'm much more like, oh, I'm a filmmaker or cinematographer or an editor, but anything to do with a film behind the scenes. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, many of times, especially in the early days, yeah, I was pulled in front of camera way too many
But
times.
that happens a lot, doesn't it, during those BTEC meetings? Because it was the same for us. We'd all, what would happen was they'd split us up into two groups. So, we'd eventually pick a story, one of our scripts.
Yeah,
There'd be two that are chosen, and then the lecturer would basically put you into groups. So you're with that group for this assignment for the rest of the term, and this one for the rest of the term. And basically you get given your role. So so there's a lot of bad acting going on. A lot of bad, a lot of bad acting going on. I mean, it's quite cringeworthy watching back on it now. Um, just I can't describe. I mean, can you think of any funny experiences that you had from people who are playing the actors' parts when they really shouldn't be, or they
well,
only had funny moments?
yeah, I did. Again, actually, ironically, from Tortured, there was an actor. One of the main characters played a really bad guy. He was a kind of angry thug kind of character, and he had his leather jacket, and he had a blank prop firearm on him and knife, like a blunt knife, and he had all these props. So he was carrying weapons, and he had this weird tash, and he'd really took on the character and was like walking around, and it'd been long shooting days, and I don't know so much he was so much in character, but he'd been playing a really bad person, had been working him non-stop. He had all his costume and characters on, and we were moving from location A to B, and we stopped on the way, and I was going to get him. It was at KFC. I said we'll just pick up some food while we're setting up the next stuff, and he needed the toilet, so he pulled up in this like van and car, and he got out, and he came busting. He goes, "Oh, where's your toilet?" But I think he was quite trained to come across like stressed out, and the guy goes, "Oh, over there." And he went to the door, and for something, the door was jammed. So he's rattling this door as I'm trying to order, and he's getting quite stressed out. He goes, "Man, what's going on? I can't get in the toilet." And as he's done here, it's displayed his gun and knife, and there was all these families, and the whole restaurant went quiet, and everyone's just sitting there with their head down. I mean, because the guy was like trying to calm him, and we realised he was like coming across quite bad, and shown that he's like armed with guns and knives and that. So I quickly threw the money at the counter, going, "Yeah, cheers," grabbed it and got us out of there, and we left sharp because the people behind the counter all kind of a little bit. I think they
No,
all
if it's
so yeah, that was quite, and that was many years ago. This day and age, we probably would have been in a lot more trouble.
yeah. I remember one of there was one guy that nobody wanted on any of the groups. He was lovely, but he was like basically there was like the one that you think is going to be the big filmmaker after college finishes and stuff, and he was a bit older than us, so he was the one that he kind of took it more seriously. Whereas we all did, but we were all kind of a lot younger, and he was more into it at the time. So he was like the big shot, but then his friend, who was lovely, was just a bit of a and was always late, and he made him the actor in his film. And this is when and we want sound. Oh no, it was another film he was on, and my friend, another friend who was given the role of the producer, used to stress out so much. You can hear on the phone shouting down, leaving a message on his phone, shouting, "Where are you? Why are you not here? You're supposed to be here at this time." And literally, like, just ranting on. It's like, Rob's he's not here yet. But yeah, so but those sort of stories are really funny now when you look back at them. But those student films are quite funny to watch because sometimes they look so cheesy. And and I remember one we had like at the end of the second year, you probably did this, we had like a last big screen viewing of our shorts, so like our advert. We had to do a jeans advert. That was the very first assignment we had to do, and a thriller and stuff. So they showed everyone's, and it was like basically a long what do you call it? It was just a nice long event for everyone to see their work on the big screen. Did you do that?
Yeah, we had that as well.
Yeah. And one of the groups, there was a shot, and his acting was really bad, right? There was a shot, and he had generally quite a big nose. There was a massive close-up shot, and it was meant to be a scary film. And me and my friend were just too busy laughing in the back. We were like, who decided to use that shot? A close up on his face, and it was just like his nose took up the entire frame. It was just so yeah, they're quite funny to look back on. I mean, I think that's kind of the cliche that comes with student films, isn't it? And it's like amateur sort of stage plays and things like that. That it's a bit like like I remember doing it. Did you ever do Amdram stuff, by the way?
Yes, I have touched on
that. Did you?
Yeah.
Were you good at learning your lines?
I've not been too bad. I've done a mixture of stuff. I've done ad lib stuff, which if I'm in the right mood or the right environment, I can be quite good at. Lines. I've been so nervous I've nailed them, but only for kind of small scenes. I wouldn't like to learn a full.
Yeah. I remember there was this youth drama group that I was with, and someone told me that one time they did a play. I wasn't doing this one with them, but I was friends with quite a lot of them. So, and he said that he did a play once, and during the play, and this was the real thing with the audience there watching, right? It was in a small theatre playhouse. The girl stopped and went, "What's the next line?" went to went to went to the person, just sort of goes off the stage and goes, "What's the next line?"
Yeah, I've filmed a lot of amateur dramatic workshops and play. I've done a lot of documentaries, so I've had a lot of experience working with them in that. But yeah, I try to keep behind the scenes rather than so much. I mean, I've been dragged into some things, but I very much try and yeah, it may be an odd cameo these days, but yeah, people
Do
seem
you
to find a
capture any
way of
funny
getting in.
footage of any of those amateur?
Yeah, I've had a lot of stuff in the past of people making mistakes or things going in weird directions, and yeah, a lot of a lot of weird things over the years. Where cameras have left rolling, or yeah, we've done a lot of takes and a mixture of films and shows and documentaries. Yeah, people forget their self, or a lot of people realise, or they panic and regret and want stuff deleted or not to make
Yeah,
cuts. You see their faces drop all of a sudden when they kind of get caught in a problem, and to get themselves out of it, they're making the problem worse and worse and worse. And you can see the fear and panic settling in, like in their voice and in their face. So
oh dear.
we yeah, I did a promotional video for an event once when it was all about sneakers and shoes, and they were doing a big presentation. We were making a short film about it, and they wanted us to get interviews. And there was a strange tutor there. He was a bit political and a bit kind of weird and arrogant. And I set up to film the shot. We were rolling, and the presenter, and he was the producer as well, started chatting to him. And this guy went in a massive monologue. He just kind of lost the plot. I did this big, quite controversial taboo monologue, which I was obviously rolling because I thought we were filming this promo. And after he finishes, the guy turns to me, the director and the producer, goes, "Great, did you get that?" And I went, "Yeah." And he goes, "Whoa, hold on a minute!" Didn't realise that we was got really stressed out with the director, and then he was having an argument trying to say, "Oh no, we'll just use good bits and do it." And he was getting, and then he started like following him around, being all a bit weird after that because he thought we were gonna ruin this guy's career because he'd been hired to do something to these shoes and spent half the time slagging them off on camera. So,
Oh
so yeah,
dear.
it's amazing how people forget their self and then they're recorded and panic.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah. Well, you can kind of see that though, especially in those kind of those documentaries where they follow like a series. Like for
Yeah,
instance, you can kind of see like how someone can sort of become too comfortable in forgetting that even though they can see the camera, they kind of forget it, don't they? Because they're too busy
yeah,
in there, especially if they're working. You don't notice that. I mean, you might do from the beginning, and then you're too busy doing your thing. Do you know what I mean? So you can see how people can kind of drop their gun and think, "Oh, I really shouldn't have said
yeah,
that. I shouldn't have done that."
yeah, yeah.
And you do hear about stuff like that, don't you? A lot, like on the radio shows and stuff when they're live. For
Yeah,
instance, and afterwards, like, I really should have said that.
radio mics and lapel mics and audio recorders are the worst. Like, being an editor, I've had to go through stuff when things have been left recording, or if I'm on set listening and people forget their mics up, and you do hear some crazy stuff.
Oh, that's a good. I was going to say that's a good thing to bring up. Have you heard? So yeah. Sometimes they'd forget that they still mic'd up, wouldn't they? Because they have like a clip-on
Yeah,
thing on a t-shirt. So has there ever been a time or times that you've like when you're not shooting and you're on a break, for instance, and they're on break and they've said something really bad or dodgy, and I don't want to get into trouble, but they've left their
it
mic on
has.
and completely forgotten. Does that happen?
I used to direct TV shows about conspiracy theories, and I was and I worked at the studio a bit doing various things, but directed a few shows at a time. And there was a presenter sat on the studio floor, and he was all mic'd up. And because it was a studio and it had all the monitors and galleries, there's always kind of like a machine rolling, and you can hear a feed through it. And it was on downtime, time, and he was just sat there on his own. He was talking to someone, and he went on a bit of a tirade and started slagging a lot of people off in the
Oh.
production company and in the film world, and people that were working there. But this was going through to the gallery, and in the gallery you've got editors and sound mixers all in there, and some people could hear him. And he went on for a long time doing this, about half hour, like really getting explicit. And someone went in there and called him up on it, and he got a bit funny. It's also recorded, so they can play it back to him. So he got a bit. There was a bit of a edgy moment where he had to apologise to some people and sort it out. But it upset a lot of people. That was one big one. I've also had an actor walk off with a mic on, and when I've gone to find out what's going on, I can hear him talking to himself, going like, saying really weird stuff and reliving the scene and lines, but just to himself walking down the street. It's really. I feel
Really
bad
bizarre.
in these people, but it's like. And then again, I've had like audio recorders on a documentary left in the back of a car, left rolling. So when I was editing that particular project, it was in the car of some of the crew, and I could hear this crew talking about people in the film world again that I knew, and they were, I tried to pass forward it, thinking I don't know if I want to hear this, but there was some juicy gossip going on, and I did tell the director. He came in when I was editing, and he goes, "It was just a black screen." I said, "Oh, someone left the audio like recording this car journey," and he looked a bit white because he was in the car when I was recording, so he knew that it'd be on. I'm just sorting through the files, but it's I'm always
Oh.
cautious.
I think that's quite a common thing. There was I'm on Facebook, a group called Starlight Express, because I used to be front of house a long time ago in my early 20s as an usher. So I did it on and off throughout my 20s, as well as traveling a lot and stuff. So every now and then someone will post a thing up on it, and they posted an old article about how one of the actors had a mic on and went off stage, obviously, because it was, he was off. And the show was still going on, but he went to the toilet and he completely forgot to be mic'd up. So the whole audience and everyone in the auditorium, the theatre, and it was a full house, could hear him peeing.
It's wedding videos use these mics a lot now, and I know once a vicar went to the toilet just before ceremony, and it actually went through to the speakers in the church. But I know some horror stories of some video
I have
guys.
heard like maybe someone slagging off the mother-in-law or something in the kitchen.
Happens a lot. I mean, I think one I'm aware of. The groom and best man were talking why he was mic'd up before the service, talking about how they'd slept with a stripper before the wedding, and it had gone through and it was recorded on the video of it, and the guy didn't know what to do about it. But yeah, there are a few where they're filming cutaways, but they're mic'd up ready, and conversations carried through to his video. They're lethal devices sometimes.
Yes. But I bet secretly that's what every filmmaker kind of dreams about, picking up, just a bit of comedy, a comedy element.
It makes the job more exciting sometimes.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh, I think that's a good place to end it. It's been lovely having you on, Jason.
Yeah, no, it's been great.
And feel free to come back anytime, and have a think about if you want to do like a themed show, for instance, like I've done. It can be absolutely anything film related, say any genre, any director. Do you know anything as long as it's film related?
Yeah.
So, there's a few on my show you can listen to. So have a think, and if you want to come back, you're more than welcome to. It's been absolutely lovely talking to you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'd be happy to.
All right, thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.